we have learned and adopted practices that actually don't support us long term. And not to our fault, it's just how things have continued to progress over generations, right? If we think about the histories of our communities, they're often ripe with poor policies and political conflict.
Say I went up to a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, I was like, oh man, I'm feeling this type of way. They're not gonna be like, you should get therapy, you should talk to somebody. You know what I'm saying? They'll be like, shake it off, man, you good, man. I feel like we do that in a lot in the Black community. We just say, shake it off, you'll be all right, just keep pushing, you know what I'm saying? So that problem still lingers, and it really just gets bigger.
In the Black community, therapy mean crazy. People won't even talk about therapy, even though we need it. But it's just something that's taboo.
We label people as being crazy, and then if you have to go seek help, then there must be something really wrong with you. We've also been taught seeking therapy or counseling is that somebody is going to tell you what to do, and they're gonna be in your business. And that's not true. Anything that is talked about, revealed in a one-on-one therapeutic session with a licensed clinical social worker is completely confidential unless somebody brings up that they are, wanting to harm themselves or someone else.
As a Black man, me going to get mental health isn't the first thing that gets props. So I guess Black mental health for at the moment, what I know is stuffing it out. I don't think we decide. I think it's a habit, a forced habit. Since we weren't helped before, we got to help ourselves.
Toughing it out is a learned behavior. It's resilience. It is what we have a plethora of. A lot of times we talk about in our community how resilience is a bad word. I don't want to be strong. I don't want to be resilient, but it's our legacy. We have earned it rightfully.
Harm reduction models sometimes can be more effective than those that are very strict and don't allow certain people to access services. When people are accessing mental health, they are accessing it with the current coping skills they have. Skills, strategies, substances, methods that might be more accessible to some communities of color, that might intersect with socioeconomic issues that a community may be facing. What we have to remember is it kept them alive today. Can they continue to develop and learn new coping skills? Of course. But if we shut the door before they even walk through the door, then how effective can that be?
My grandmother, when she died, everything they owned was somewhere in the house. Money in the walls. You would look back on that and say, why in God's name would you, well, she lived through the Depression. She lived through where she wasn't allowed in banks. If you can't figure out why you're reacting the way you're reacting, or why your life looks like what it looks like, if you don't know why, then you don't know what you're doing, and you don't even know how to effectively be whatever it is you're trying to be.
In the Black community, our depression looks a little bit different. Sometimes it looks like irritability and anger and sleeplessness and constant worry and anxiety, modeling those behaviors for our children. And some of the relationships, the attachment relationships, are impacted in the Black community because of the intergenerational trauma that's occurring, not through any fault of their own, but because a lack of resources, a lack of community connection leaves you more vulnerable.
When you meet somebody, they have varied parts of their identity. And when these systems are not designed to fluctuate, to give way, to create space or room for different ways for people to access it, it becomes a one-size-fits-all. And that one size doesn't necessarily call out to all communities.
Some other challenges are just widespread mistrust for the medical system and the mental health system, just because of historic issues.
When we are being given assessments, for example, to access services, the way we behave, the way we cope, the way we speak about our challenges may not ring familiar to our assessors. Being able to relate to a client who may not have the words yet to describe what it is they're experiencing, it helps when the person sitting across from them has some understanding, to know that they have a right to to ask for a specific type of therapist, if that's going to help them in doing their professional work with a therapist, that's an important thing for them to know.
It was hard for me to find a therapist because in the Black community, therapy isn't really talked about. Me and my mom, when we were looking for one, we really wanted a therapist that looked like me and that could understand things that I'll be talking about.
The other big issue is just educating the community. Like, what are some things to look out for? Signs and symptoms of, when someone's in a mental health crisis and when someone needs that support, and then how to go about getting that support. The more we can educate the community, the more we can definitely save lives.
I think a lot of times what toxic stress and trauma does is it puts sort of a layer of fog or dark smoke over your ability to see things as they really are, meaning they might be harming you, the relationships you're in, the routines you're in, the workplace you're in, your job. If you are not sleeping at night, if you are having constant somatic symptoms like grinding your teeth, headaches, nausea all the time, constant irritability, what it is your body is telling you something in your life is disrupting your health, so you need to change. And I'm going to keep warning you with all of these things until I cannot warn you anymore, because I'm just going to give up. We as a whole community, when it comes to mental health, we tend to seek treatment when we are in crisis or when our functioning is impacted.
Sometimes you need to talk to somebody that you don't know, that could just listen to your problem and diagnose it and give you their opinion on how you should deal with something.
What storytelling does, that's what therapy is. Therapy is feeling heard, going to someone who has a non-judgmental response and is just holding space.
Group therapy I've found to be really helpful when I was younger. There was a kind of group therapy program offered at my school. We would meet as a small group. It was, I think, the first place where I learned really how to name my emotions, how to start to identify what the impact of something was having on me personally. Growing up, I felt like I wasn't allowed to have my emotions. This was grown people's business.
I would tell parents to be more aware of their kids, like how their kids are feeling, what their kids are doing, like how they feel about the world and how the world is affecting them. Because that plays a big part in your whole life, like your childhood traumas.
Integrating these social, emotional lessons and learning into the curriculum, because a lot of times, in the past, educators just wanted to focus on math or focus on history or, that sort of thing. But now I think we're understanding that if we don't make sure that the children are mentally well, then they have a harder time accessing their education.
Starting therapy so young was really helpful for me, particularly because I had the chance to be in a group of other middle schoolers who were crying, who were devastated, who were elated at things too. You get to see that what you're experiencing is not so different from somebody else. I was able to really see myself reflected in stories of people who I would have never imagined we had some of the same issues. To this day, I feel like sharing and being honest about what's real for me is, really what supports me in managing my own mental health day to day.
What is happy, what is healthy, what does that look like in our own community? What does that look like in any community of color? Ask them, allow space for variability. And I think that would help eliminate some stigma as to how some people come to us for help.
Really understanding trauma-informed care is really essential to an educator and a parent.
If you're just holding in stress, repressing it all the time, eventually you're gonna start having headaches and stomach aches and just not feeling well. Well, that's just all about mental health.
Yes, you got this and you can keep going, but your body can only sustain keeping going for a short period of time. So the only other option is to release it from your mind. And that requires some skill set. For the most part, what I work on with clients is routine building. I think that you can have a routine of going to your therapist once a week, which is totally fine. but you only see your therapist once a week, then that's up to you to build a routine of self-love and self-care and health and commit to it.
When we think about mental health, I think it has such, a bad rap.
Mental health is the first part of physical health. If you are not aware or listening to what your body is telling you, your mind is the one that does that, awareness. Your brain is the one that makes the decision to take action. You have to do the work of mental health in order to be your most optimal self, and there's no way around it.